Okay.
And we're off. Here comes the music. See you on the other side. And so it's 10:16 now. I'm writing this down for my benefit. I need to stop around about 11. Oh, shut your face. Here we go. Not you, me. And we're off. Welcome to a special Brand Strand episode of the Good Listening To podcast with me, Chris Grimes. The podcast series that brings you The Clearing, where all good questions come to be asked and all good stories come to be told. And where all my guests have two things in common. They're all creative individuals and all with an interesting story to tell. And Brand Strand is where I wrap an episode of the podcast with its strong storytelling construct around a particular company or individual to amplify their company or personal brand. Who are you? What's your story? And what do you do? So yes, welcome to a GLT Brand Strand, and we're recording, please. So I bid you welcome, thrice welcome to a very, very exciting day in the Good Listening To, the story behind your story show, Clearing. Please welcome Alex Taskin, the wonderful human being. She's not just a life whisperer or a people whisperer. She's also going to be moving into horse whispering too. But the most important thing is she's a proper people whisperer. She's been running Passe-Partout for as many years as she's about to tell us she's been doing that for. But she has achieved mastery in the sense that she's had 20,000 hours of doing what she does and loves to do the most. So Alex Taskin from Passe-Partout, you are very, very welcome.
Thank you. I'm absolutely delighted to be here. It's very exciting.
So this is a very special Brand Strand episode whereby I'm going to wrap an episode of it around your story and why you do what you do and the wonderful purpose that you have. What's so exciting about Passe-Partout is you've rebranded recently, but you've allied your story to Around the World in 80 Days by Jules Verne. And I so loved researching you because you said in terms of the valet to Philleas Fogg, which is the man himself. Yes, you are positioning yourself as the personal valet to our success in how you nurture and develop us all. So just tell us the story of Passe-Partout and how it got going.
Right. Well, it is quite a story, actually. So I started Passe-Partout consulting after I gave birth to my middle daughter, my middle child. So it was way back in 1998. So this is our 24th year, which is very exciting.
Congratulations.
Yeah, quite something really. So I started it, I was 32, I had a career in learning and development and HR, and I didn't really want to go back into that corporate world. Wanted to do something which was a bit different. I wanted to bring a slightly younger perspective, maybe even, dare I say it, a female perspective into this world, where I was seeing a lot of consultants where I used to call them slightly rudely the grey-haired brigade, which now at my age that feels very ironic, but at the time I felt we needed something slightly different. And when thinking about setting up the company and thinking of a name, I didn't want it to be Alex Taskin Associates or Alex Taskin Consulting.
Yeah.
Needed to be something a bit different. So me and my partner, who is now in the business but wasn't at that stage, talked about what would be a good name. And it was actually his idea, Passe-Partout. Having read the book and all the rest of it, why we should do that. And yes, so it's the person that supports Philleas Fogg around his journey in 80 days.
So a personal valet to your success, and it's quite a balloon ride with you. You're talking about navigating change and achieving beyond your wildest dreams with what you then bring to bear. So I love the fact that it's allied to the story of that. And there's been the new David Tennant story of Around the World in 80 Days as a BBC thing at the moment as well.
Yes. So that was just pure coincidence that we decided to rebrand back in December.
Yes.
And of course, this was launched in January. So sort of what a gift. And it was really interesting watching David Tennant's version, because it is very different. If you've read the book, it's very different, but it's bang up to date. He's brought that kind of Victorian story back into the sort of 21st century. And I do see myself as Passepartout. I do. And actually watching Ibrahim Comer's portrayal.
Yes, great research.
Wasn't he fabulous? I mean, he was fabulous. And I kind of really align with how he is. Slightly flawed sometimes, but that's okay because we're not all perfect.
That is the human condition. And I so enjoy the fact that you call yourself let us be your personal valet to your success. Because, of course, Passepartout was the valet to Philleas Fogg.
Yeah, absolutely.
Lovely.
Yeah.
So what I'm going to do is take you through the storytelling metaphors of the Good Listening To show, where we're going to talk about a clearing, and we're going to ally this to the story of Passepartout. Obviously, there's a clearing or serious happy place of your choice, and then it's all to play for because you've got a tree within your clearing, and then we shake your tree to see which storytelling apples fall out, and that's where you've been kind enough to prepare the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 answers. That's 5 minutes to have thought about 4 things that have shaped you or Passepartout, 3 things that inspire you, 2 things that never fail to grab your attention, and we'll take you through that. Then there's alchemy, gold, a cheeky bit of Shakespeare, a couple of random squirrels, and a cake. So it's absolutely all to play for. So let's get you on the open road then. I'll ask you a question you weren't necessarily expecting to start with. So when you got in touch with me just before we recorded today, you said, "Oh, can I come on at sort of 1:45 because I'm mucking out the horses," as you've said. So how's morale? What's your story of the day?
My story of the day. What I've done so far today is I've gone and looked after all my animals, which are far too many of them. So I've fed the 4 dogs. I've mucked out the 2 horses and been out in, what is actually a beautiful day outside today. So actually that's great. Lots of energy from doing all of that. So I'm feeling relaxed and ready to have this conversation, actually.
And it sounds like you have a veritable menagerie of various creatures to take care of, not least your family, your children, yes. Darren, and the horses and the dogs. Any other animals in there in the menagerie?
3 cats. Did I mention the cats?
You didn't mention the cats.
That's enough.
Yes, they should appear on your lap at various points. That's, of course, the New World Order with Zoom and Teams and that sort of thing as well. Wonderful. So let's get you going then. A clearing, first of all. So what is a serious happy place? What is a clearing like for you, Alex Taskin, founder of Passe-Partout? Where do you go to get clutter-free, inspirational and able to think?
Well, a lot of people say water and mountains, and it definitely is about water. Having discovered wild swimming, not so long ago, actually, probably about 5 years ago, discovered wild swimming and discovered it in a lake it was actually in the mountains in France. Lake Montriond was the first time to go swimming, open water swimming like that. And now it's become a thing. So I could mention quite a lot of lakes that I've been to over the last 5 years, or streams or rivers or whatever. But particular one, thinking about it, so it could have been, as I say, Lake Montriond or Leybourne Lakes or whatever, but the particular one that I'd like to go to today is it's actually a river, and it's in somewhere called Capel Curig in Wales, very near Betsy Coed, and it's a particular stream which has got a fabulous pool in the stream. And beside the stream is a fabulous number of trees. Gosh. So you swim out there in this lovely clear water that's probably been swum in for generations by kids, actually. I don't think wild swimming is new, really,
Yes.
But
we're not the first human beings to plop into the water, shall we say. But I love how it's a secret happy place. And when you find somewhere that's truly magical, you almost don't want to tell people about it because it's mine. It's mine.
Yeah, definitely. I don't want everybody going there. It is definitely mine, and it is so beautiful. And I really hope to go back there in May, actually. So. And
just say once again where it is, and then we'll position the rest of the show in that clearing.
It's in Wales, so it's in North Wales, Snowdonia. It's in a very small place called Capel Curig, and it is just beautiful.
Lovely. So welcome to your clearing. And if I may now, I'm going to arrive with a tree in your clearing. And this is a bit Waiting for Godot-esque because I'm sort of an actor by training and background. And so quite existentially, I'm going to arrive with a tree now and shake your tree to see how your storytelling apples fall out pertaining to you, your purpose, the work of the wonderful company that you run, Passe-Partout. So 4 things, first of all, that have shaped you, Alex Taskin.
Okay, so this is it's quite interesting, and I might get a little bit emotional as I talk about this, but I think my dad definitely shaped me. So he was quite an amazing man, and he was a naval officer. So he joined the Navy when he was 13 at Dartmouth. He was in the same cohort almost to Prince Philip. I think he was a couple of years younger than Prince Philip. Wow. And he was saw the end of the war, all of that. But the thing that I'd like to mention about him was his sailing, and he sailed around the world. So isn't that interesting? The parallel back to around the. So he was the first round the world race in 1973. He was the race manager for the naval yacht, and it was the first time that any of those sailing yachts had raced around the world, and the first time they'd gone that far south. So Antarctica. So, and that was the leg that he actually sailed. So he sailed from Cape Town to Australia, to Sydney. And on that leg back in 73, and Che Blythe and all these other great people, Che Blythe lost one person overboard, died. There was another one off, I think it was Eric Tarbaley's boat, somebody died. And my dad, he was an amazing leader. He had to lead this group of however many fairly young men. He was slightly older than them, and it was very difficult. And actually, he was an amazing, so he made me who I am, really, because he had this belief even then that women could be successful and didn't treat me in any different way. So I had a father, which is quite unusual actually, that helped me develop my own leadership skills and my own self-belief.
Gosh, and the sort of adventurer in your DNA, the fact that your father was an epic adventurer, which again, is such a lovely parallel to Around the World in 80 Days. How long was his quest in the journey that he did in 1973?
Well, I mean, the leg that he did was a month. And it's funny enough, because I've actually got the logbook from that. And some of the stuff was just, used to do these thought for the days. And some of them are just amazing, why can't penguins fly or something? There'll be weird whatever was going on, but the whole actual round the world, I think, took them best part of a year, because the yachts needed to be refitted each time. And I think the naval yacht came second. It was called Adventure, funny enough. Amazing.
And I couldn't help hearing you mention Blythe in there as well, which makes me think of Mutiny on the Bounty and Keep an Even Keel, Mr. Christian, and all that stuff as well. Also, in your getting emotional just there, I'm assuming, reading between the lines, your father is no longer with us. Is that the case?
Yeah. So I was a child. I was born quite late to my parents. So they were in their early 40s, but before I came along. So yes, very sadly, it means that you don't have them that long, actually. In some way. But he was truly inspirational. He wasn't actually. He was a real compassionate leader. So, and in those days, I think in the 70s and 80s, that wasn't really how people were, but that's actually how he was. And I was listening to something about Shackleton, that Dan Snow is just about going down to try and find the Shackleton ship. And that wasn't quite that far south that they sailed, but Shackleton was a similar leader, I think, that my dad was, actually, however many years on. So
there's a real intrepidness within the DNA of the family makeup that make the Taskins. And how many siblings do you have, or do you have any?
I have one sibling, one sister who's 20 years older than me. So they had one child right at the beginning of their marriage, and then me, much later on. So we're two sole children, if I'm honest. We're both, we brought up as two different. We never were at home. And my sister, funny enough, went and lived in South Africa when I was 2. Maybe I was the cuckoo, sent her off. But
Wow.
anyway.
But there's a lovely sort of slingshot of adventure where your father did something very epic and you're doing something wonderfully epic. And in fact, when I was researching you, what was so lovely is you've said, I feel at the top of my game right now, which is the true arrival at wisdom when you think, do you know what, I've got this and I really know what I'm doing. And there's purpose there in what you're bringing.
Yeah, and I do feel that. I feel in some ways it almost feels slightly arrogant saying that, but I feel that, having been learning and development kind of behavioral psychologist is kind of how we see ourselves. Having been doing that for 30 years, actually, I do understand how people operate, and that enables me to be compassionate or knowledgeable or working with their needs. I don't need to necessarily be thinking about myself all the time. I can then put my energies and support and help to the other person, whether it be leadership or coaching or the work that we do with Wellbeing. Actually, it enables me to get that degree of focus, which I think is helpful.
And I came up with around the world in training ways as opposed to around the world in 80 days when thinking about you and the raison d'etre of what Passe-Partout do.
Yes, I love it. Love it. I think that is what we do. Training. Yeah, love it. Really, thank you.
So it's all about everything, all things to do with leadership, coaching, and well-being. We'll talk about your love of horses and coaching as your big, great passions. And there's an overt invitation to go as deep as you like later on as to where we can find out more about Passe-Partout. But we're still in the wonderful canopy of the trees. So you've had your father as number one shapeage.
He's my number one shapeage, and sort of linking on to that, then number 2 is my going to university. So 84 to 87, I went to university up at University of East Anglia, and actually, I think at that stage, I really wanted to go and do agricultural college, which is the horsey thing. But I wasn't. My father, again, it was very clear that he wanted me to have an education, to be able to, look after myself. In fact, his mother had been a doctor. So that would have been very unusual in those days. In fact, she didn't even manage to qualify in the UK. She had to go and get her qualification in Dublin. So he kind of believed in females to have a career. So he really encouraged me to go to university. I wasn't that keen. Probably I went up to UEA and had a look at it, and it was the best of a bad bunch as far as I was concerned. But off I went intrepidly, and I had the best time. Those 3 years at university for me really shaped who I was. I met people that somehow I felt I'd come home. There were people that had the same belief structure as me. They had the same interests. They challenged, they debated. And also I did subjects that I actually loved, and they've taken me all the way through. So I did social sciences. So I did philosophy and politics and sociology, and I also did a lot of women's studies. So I did women's literature and feminism in action and all those kind of things, which actually have really shaped me, there's no doubt.
And there's that lovely idea of your vibe attracts your tribe, which is a mantra I've often heard. So you obviously found your calling and you found your place.
I did.
Also, I so love the fact that it's your father that is the real women's champion in nudging you along. How fantastic.
Yeah, absolutely. And surprising how that was. But certainly did that. And I've read so much, actually, because my mother sadly died last year. So I've ended up with all the kind of family history and the narrative and stuff which I absolutely didn't believe was there. Even letters that he wrote to his mother about my mother, and so actually I've learned very much about their psyche over the last year, which has been really, really interesting.
Gosh, how profound. Blimey. And you've also got the logbook as well of your father's epic quest in 1973. How brilliant.
Yes, and I've got the letter that he wrote to my mother, having arrived safe and sound, because they broke the boom on this. So they had to actually remake the boom halfway down in the South Atlantic with these waves, which were I want to say 100 foot, but that would be too big. Maybe they were
mountainous waves.
Mountainous waves. Mountainous waves.
And I love the fact you're in a sort of metaphorical balloon now in the Philleas Fogg land above it all, so you're able to look down upon the history, the legacy, and the journeying towards this point, your journey to now.
And there's no doubt.
Third thing of shapeage.
Well, the shape, it's all that is linked as well. It's kind of finding what I love doing. There is no doubt, actually finding that thing. So I went in after university. I got one of the very few positions as a graduate management trainee for Debenhams. I found out very early on that actually being on as a man, because they wanted us to be store managers in 5 years. I found out very early on that the whole kind of running the department wasn't really my bag, but training was. And I think they saw that in me as well. So I got moved quite quickly into a learning and development or a training role, and I got sent all over the place to open stores. It was at that age where, you know, the malls were opening up. I went to Belfast where they were bombs going off. I went up to Dudley, you know, it was fantastic. But I learned that that's what I was good at. So to learn that quite early on in your career, so I would have been in my very, you know, early 20s, and that whole behavioural psychology and people and the difference you can make to them. In Belfast, for instance, we were opening this store that it was right in the middle of the Troubles, and we had they'd had to recruit using diversity, so we had equal amounts of Protestants and Catholics, and I learned that these people actually really found it so challenging to be in the same space together, and all of those things to learn and to try and understand and try and weave teams together with quite a lot of challenge. Anyway, that really did shape me, there's no doubt.
And I can really tell that's where the people whispering really began. I mean, your father was the original people whisperer, and then you followed that through. And people whispering, and so beautifully allied to now horse whispering and your love of all things equine as well, which I know you will.
Which is, of course, that's my fourth. So that is my fourth.
Easy tigress, okay.
That is my fourth, yeah, absolutely. Horses, absolutely, they're right in my DNA. From the age of 9, when I first not quite set eyes on one, but was allowed to start having riding lessons. And I think some people, or people that are passionate about something, they get it and then they cannot let it go, and it's almost an addiction. I mean, that's what my family would say, you know, it's almost an addiction, the whole horse thing.
And do your family all share that, or is that Alex's thing and then they all go along with it because you're a great influencer?
Actually, it has been the children's thing over the time. They had all the opportunities to do it, and particularly my middle child, Charlie, competed, and you know, that was great. And but they've grown out of it slowly. I think a lot of people do, children do. So it is mum's thing. It is mum's thing.
And for those that are watching you here as well, there is a clock in the background, and horses are ever present because you've got a horse sort of dangling as a sort of, what is that in fact? Is that something?
It actually says enter at A, which is part of a dressage test. So you enter at A and proceed to Prosecco. That's what that actually says, yeah.
I love that. Enter at A and proceed to Prosecco. In fact, that should be the mantra for the entire programme. I love that. Yes, wonderful. Experience Passe-Partout, enter at A, and then proceed to Prosecco when you've become awesome, thanks to our learning and development awesomeness. I love that.
Yeah,
that's leadership, coaching and well-being right there. Okay, so that's, I believe, the 4 things that have shaped you.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, now we're going to talk about 3 things that inspire you. And if there's any overlap or connection or resonance, that's brilliant. But 3 things that inspire you.
Yes, and there is overlap, of course there is. And the thing that inspires me is possibility. So is there what possibility is there? What is there out there? You know, what can I achieve? People achieve, etc. So, you know, the 3 things that I've thought about: travel. And travel being a metaphor, actually. So travel, especially over the last 2 years, you know, it's not, we can't all jump on a plane. We're probably not all wanting to jump on a plane. I think the whole, being eco-conscious. Do we really want to do long haul flights at the moment? So there's all of that. It's not just the whole pandemic, but we travel somewhere in our minds, don't we? That whether we read or whether we expose ourselves to other people, come out quite right, but if we see other people or learn about people, the whole thing about travel, in its biggest sense, definitely inspires me.
Which links beautifully to, of course, the idea of a growth as opposed to a fixed mindset, just being open and receptive to doors that can open for us, windows of opportunity, which can be windows of opportunity in the mind, of course.
Absolutely. And growth mindset is so much a mantra for me. Absolutely. And growth mindset, 10,000 hours of purposeful practice, all of that. And that's by coaching coming out. And I genuinely believe people can be whatever they want to be, but they have to want it.
And by the way, I was really struck in your positioning yourself of being at the top of your game when you said you've realised, you quantified 20,000, and there is that lovely thing that's stated that you need 20,000 hours experience in something to become a true master. And so it's not arrogant at all to just be able to just calculate, gosh, that's how much experience I've had.
Absolutely. And one of my very early jobs is after I'd left Debenhams and I'd gone into the NHS, and I worked as a learning and development manager in the NHS. And this was again early 90s. It might have been 1990. What they asked me to do, because obviously I come from Debenhams, we'd like you to run a customer care program for all our staff. So, exactly how many of you? 3,000 staff. We want you to run customer care training for all of them. And first off, I was like, is that quite appropriate? Because they're patients, aren't they, rather than customers? Are we happy with that terminology? No, we want that. That was very much in the purchaser provider split of the NHS that Sir Margaret Thatcher had brought in. It was a very moment in time, customer care training. And I remember young, not necessarily desperately inexperienced, but young person, me, trying to enable doctors and dentists and all these other professionals, as well as all the, I want to say back office stuff, but they're actually forefronts, the people that really hold it all together. I was running these customer care programs. If that wasn't my 10,000 hours of purposeful practice, what was? Because I saw everything in that time.
And of course, that's beautifully positioned the project management scale of what you're now able to do with Passe-Partout, because I know during the pandemic, one of the really juicy pieces of help you did was get involved with really supporting the medical profession under great duress during the course of the pandemic.
Yes, and we have trained now over the last 2 years, particularly as two things that we've done a lot with the NHS, one of which is running these leadership support circles. And we have run, there's been 10,000 actually of these circles, funny enough, that have been run out through the whole of the NHS. We won actually 2 Personnel Today awards collectively with the NHS England improvements. It's actually been fantastically well received, 92% net promoter score, and actually I think it stopped a lot of people going under. And we also trained up, which is what our belief is, other people to deliver it. So it wasn't just us delivering these as Passe-Partout, it was other people, and that's now really running. And the other thing that we're doing, which is right in the middle of, is a program to help managers run well-being conversations with their staff, because so many elements of the NHS now are really feeling the brunt of it. It is really hard. There's no doubt about it. And whatever can be done by leaders and managers to support their staff has got to be the right thing. And the small part that we've played to help managers do that, I'm really supremely proud of.
And you've got there is again the slingshotting of playing it forward. Your father did it, you're doing it, and you're trying to nurture, help develop others to take it forward themselves as well.
Absolutely. We don't want to be the sort of consultants that come in with our watch to help. They give you the watch and you tell them the time. Hey, that's not what we are. We are there to leave the real legacy behind us.
Well, we're coming on to legacy. That's a wonderful segue. So we're still in the idea of the inspirationals.
Right, so the inspirationals we had, so it's travel, and that can be a bit of a metaphor. We've got my dad again. There's no doubt that, you know, there's loads of, we could spend the whole 45 minutes talking about him, really.
He's obviously great, your dad, because even I've mentioned him 3 times and I didn't even know him.
My dad was definitely, has inspired me. And then I would say my family. I'm, you know, really lucky. I've got 3 fabulous children. And they challenge and inspire me all the time, and in ways that, you know, sometimes I really have to think, goodness, are they really, is that, you know, did I create that? Did they, whatever environment or whatever has created that? So you know, they have been truly amazing. And also my partner, Darren O'Connor, he challenges and inspires me all the time. We wouldn't have Passe-Partout without him.
Wonderful. Lovely. Every now and again I like a silence, just to sort of go, let us catch up. Okay, lovely. We could be on to 2 things that never fail to grab your attention now. And this, borrowed from the film Up, is the idea of, oh, squirrels. You know, what never fails to grab your attention, whatever else is going on for you.
That's really interesting, isn't it? And, you know, I think the thing that grabs my attention always is, I want to say eclectic people, but what I mean by that is I think I mean people that are really passionate about whatever it is they're passionate about. They might be challenging, they might be unusual, they might I don't know, they could be from any walk of life in any way. I love people. I love unusual people. I love people that have something about them.
You see, we're going back to people whispering. I think you're just fascinated by people, therefore people whispering, and you're very sort of attracted to, oh, what are they saying? Whisper, whisper, whisper.
Yeah, I am. And we have an amazing group of associates that work with us, work alongside us. And, you know, there's 22 of them. They are all different, and they provide such a wealth of experience, support, challenge, creativity. Creativity is actually right up there. So most of these unusual people, they would probably find that really hard that I'm calling them unusual. They're not. They're just passionate, creative, fabulous individuals.
Sort of quirky or maverick are words I quite like.
So. Yeah, I love that. Quirky, definitely. Maverick, definitely.
Yes.
And maybe that's my children as well. They are quirky and maverick, all 3 of them.
Well, if I may, and this is a total compliment, so are you, and I'm not just being nice to you, but quirky and maverick are great qualities because they're sort of outliers, able to be super objective, outside looking in.
Yeah.
Which is a great conduit for creativity, I believe, as well.
Yeah.
And again, your vibe attracts your tribe. How you've gone about selecting that tribe must be very interesting, about who comes into your awareness about, oh gosh, that's different, that's unusual, that's going to add a currency of different value.
And to be honest, most people come to us. I don't think I've gone out. I can't think of any of them that I've gone out and had to put an ad out and selected in that way. People have just come to us and think, oh yes, we've been on one of your programs, or we've seen what you do, we like what you do, can we be part of that? And that often it's the case that they are, and they join us. And a lot of people have worked in organizations and then they come to us. So it's very interesting to see how that recruitment of our extended team has happened over the years. And we have people that have been with us from the beginning, Chris, 20 odd years, 23 years. It's great. Love it.
My favorite word in, I suppose, training and development is reciprocity. What you give out, you'll get back. And I love the fact there is a chime and a resonance whereby what you've given out is then coming back to you. And it's firing off all sorts of analogies about iron filings around a magnet and that sort of thing as well.
I'm slightly weird, but I do think that's right. I think I probably, we are a bit of a magnet that and I believe that the right people come to you at the right time in your life. They appear. And I equally believe, and that's my second grab, anything horsey, Chris, will grab my attention at any time, anything horsey. So whether it's, watching something on the telly or going into the New Forest, oh, there's a pony.
Yes.
It isn't, there's a squirrel, there's a horse.
And there's no horses in the Winter Olympics, I'm noticing.
It's sad, isn't it? It is sad.
Yes.
But I
One-
also think the right horse comes to you at the right time in your life. So
yes, there we get into equine whispering as well later on.
yeah,
I'm managing a conversation that's going to end in about 10 minutes, which is plenty of time. That is, time well used. 10 minutes is an acre of time. But I'm just curating the conversation so we get a sort of slight knock along. So now can I hear a quirky or unusual fact about you, Alex Taskin, founder of Passe-Partout, that we couldn't possibly know until you tell us?
right. Now this is interesting. I actually had, and again, it's linked back to the horses. I had quite a catastrophic riding accident 2 years ago. Actually, it's 3 years ago this year. And it was just before the pandemic. It was at the end of September. And I had a brain injury, in effect.
Crikey.
And it was jumping, and it was nobody's fault. It was just one of those things. Most riders have had it at some stage in their lives, but the horse fell on top of me, kicked me in the head, and I ended up with this brain injury. And I had the most amount of time I've ever had off work, more than I had with having the children. Probably had 4 or 5 months off work. Really struggled to get back into it. And it was interesting because that happened just before the pandemic. So it happened in the September, and there we were after Christmas. I was still struggling to get back into work, and I was my brain was telling me weird things, lots of weird things that were going on. So I would see things, it just given myself a great shaking up. And then the pandemic hit, and I had to somehow manage to help things move forward, because the business at that stage could have actually just melted away, because we needed to turn from a very much face-to-face business to being an online Zoom business really quickly on a sixpence. And the NHS were clamoring for us to do this particular piece of work, which was all about compassionate leadership. So not only were we having to do something at scale in a different platform, using a group of associates who'd never done this sort of stuff before, and I'm suffering with this brain injury.
Crikey.
So I had to pull every single bit of resilience that I had out, and really practice what I preach. And for me, that's been a huge learning curve, that I was able to do that. So I even found it hard to sit in a chair like this. I'm sitting opposite, so I went out and bought myself the right ergonomic chair. I started doing yoga every lunchtime. I started practicing my mindfulness absolutely religiously, and really had to change the way I was looking after myself, because the business needed me. I wasn't quite fit, but I got through it, and now I am feeling completely 99% back.
Wow. And what a profound analogy or metaphor about, the pandemic was a bit of a kick in the head for many, many people, but you had an extraordinarily powerful experience, which has then informed your own capability with resilience, again, in playing it forward. I mean, that's such an extraordinary founder story of I was kicked in the head and this is now what I'm doing. Wow.
Yeah, it was really difficult. It was interesting, though, that the business was able to survive without me from the September through to the February, so that was something which a few years before that I wouldn't have really believed that it would have been able to. And that was because we had these amazing associates, and my co-director, who's also my husband, Darren, was able to manage that, and Sam, who is absolutely our backbone in the business. So Sam and Darren were able to manage things when I was really unwell.
And of course, gradually you've got back on your horse, metaphorically and literally, which is wonderful.
And actually, within the last few weeks, I've started jumping again.
You are indeed a trailblazer. I love that. Okay, so we're going to move away from your tree now, and we're in the clearing still, which is your wonderful wild swimming location in Wales. And alchemy and gold now. When you're at purpose and in flow, Alex Taskin, you've been giving me alchemy and gold by the bucket load anyway, but what are you absolutely happiest doing when you're in flow and at purpose?
helping people change. I believe that anybody can change if they want to. And people might not want to, people might not need to, might not want to, that might not be something. But I think if anything, the pandemic has proved to us that we need to have that growth mindset. We need to have a flexible approach. We need to be able to have what we call post-traumatic growth, which is actually, let's look at growth. So I believe that everybody can grow, develop, change. And in fact, that's one of our really deep-seated Passe-Partout values. We change lives. And I fundamentally believe that's what we do. And that's what people tell us, that's what we do.
And the Around the World in 80 Days parallel of, adventuring beyond your wildest dreams and changing and achieving beyond your wildest dreams is exactly what the purpose is. I'm gathering that completely and profoundly.
Yes.
Okay, so now I'm going to award you with a cake for gracing us with your presence here in the Good Listening To Clearing. So the cake is a favourite quote that's always given you succour and pulled you towards your future. What advice might you proffer to a younger version of yourself? And then finally, inspired by Shakespeare and all the world's a stage, how, when all is said and done, Alex Taskin, would you most like, in terms of your legacy, to be remembered?
Well, that's really interesting, isn't it? So I would like a carrot cake, thank you.
You're welcome.
I'd like a carrot cake. I'd love that. And I was thinking, actually, it's a Tolstoy quote, I was thinking.
Ooh.
And he was asked for the most important piece of advice that he would give men of our century. So obviously this isn't that, it was a previous century to where we are now. But he said, in the name of God, stop a moment, cease your work, look around. And that's my quote. I think people sometimes just need to pause, stop, take stock and look around. I think that's such a powerful quote.
And that didn't half happen to you when you were kicked in the head off your horse and you had to be still for 5 months before the pandemic. I can't think of almost a better preparation, ironically, for how you've then navigated through the change of the pandemic.
Absolutely. And it changed the way that I operate completely. So I know that my resilience, I cannot do 5 days back to back delivering.
Yes.
I need to look after myself now, and that's a metaphor for everybody. We have to. If it's the pouring from an empty cup, nobody can pour from an empty cup, or the oxygen mask principle, whichever metaphor you want to use. Yes. And some of them are quite trite, but actually, you need to look after yourself first. You've really got to, because if anybody in a helping profession, in some ways that's what we are, you need to be in the best possible place so that you can help people to the best possible standard. And that is what my legacy would be, that people look back and think, yes, Passe-Partout helps people. They change lives. They get people to get people to see things differently. They can achieve what they want to achieve, or they can just be. They can just be and be happy with just being.
Beautifully, eloquently put, Alex. Wonderful. Where can we find out more about Passe-Partout on the interweb, please?
Well, please go to our website, which is www.passe-partout.com. You can find about there. We're also on LinkedIn and on Facebook. And I think we even do a little bit of Instagram.
Ooh, go you. Lovely. And as this has been your moment in the clearing, here in the Good Listening To, the Story Behind Your Story show, is there anything else, Alex, you'd like to say?
I think I've said plenty, but thank you so much for having me, Chris. I've really loved having this conversation with you.
You're very welcome. And a slight apology from me for the technical problems what we was having at the beginning, but I think we've got there in the end, which is wonderful. So, yes, you've been listening to me, Chris Grimes. This has been the wonderful Alex Taskin from Passe-Partout, helping you to navigate change and achieve beyond your wildest dreams. And again, the final thing about Philleas Fogg and the valet Passe-Partout, this has been quite a balloon ride. It's been a pleasure talking to you. Thank you very much indeed, and good night.